War in Afghanistan has come to an end. As of the 28th of December 2014, NATO will remove its combat troops and take a more supportive role in Afghanistan. The politics and history of Afghanistan are quite interesting, and thus a good topic for today's video. Smack dab in the middle of Asia, Afghanistan has been the crossroads for many cultures and empires. Being a bridge between China and India to the east and the Middle East in the west, it has been a very strategic location for pretty much every empire you can name, from Alexander the Great to the Mughals, even the British and the Soviet Union. The Durrani Empire, founded in 1747 by Ahmad Shah Durrani, united most of the Afghan tribes, and this is where the proto-statehood of the Afghanistan that we know began. Although the tribes were mostly united, there were large areas in which there was nothing. Hence, what most pre-modern rulers did was leave those areas to do their own thing and focus on the more prosperous areas. The problem is, in a world order governed by states, it's a little bit harder to do that without running into problems. The UK wanted to take over Afghanistan in the 1800s in order to expand the East India Company, to create a better link between them and the Persians. The first Anglo-Afghan war, beginning in 1839, united the Afghan tribes to fend off the invaders. Unfortunately, the country ended up in a brief civil war in the 1860s. State building came rather swiftly after that, with Afghanistan seeking aid from the British to do so. With two imperialist forces surrounding them, British India to the east and Russia to the north, Sher Ali Khan, the ruler at the time, wanted to modernize and make Afghanistan a progressive place, if only to keep Britain and Russia from trying to invade again. Britain did invade again, and made a free trade zone out of Afghanistan after winning the Second Anglo-Afghan War in the 1880s. The Afghans began to formalize the state with a central authority, much to, well, basically the entire country's annoyance. But despite this and many uprisings, Afghanistan actually had a progressive and secular state going into the 20th century. However, that immediately failed as the years went by, as every leader was either exiled or killed violently. So despite being officially free of the British in 1919 after a third Anglo-Afghan war, the state had many issues to work out. Although the period of both world wars relative to later on in their history was stable, the country was very damaged by the Second World War economically, which all but killed modernization attempts. Though they did get help by playing off both Cold War powers in the 50s and 60s. The country was quite fragile politically, which was exemplified by when the monarchy fell and the Soviets invaded in the 1970s. In fact, the reason why the Soviets invaded was because there was a civil war going on between the communists and the Mujahideen. However, the Soviets ultimately failed in their attempts to take over Afghanistan, and after 10 years, in 1989, they left. However, the Mujahideen, backed by the Americans, fought amongst themselves for power throughout the 90s, and ultimately, the Taliban, a very extreme splinter group, began to take control of the country. After 9/11, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan in order to take out the terrorists that had committed the offense, leading NATO, led by the Americans, to invade Afghanistan. Which brings us to today. You can spot the theme here. It's war. Lots of it. And as I said earlier, Afghanistan is a hard place to govern. Since its founding, the country has been very much like Swiss cheese, governable in some parts, but with holes for terrorists and other ne'er-do-wells to hide in, that keep it from being a functioning state. That said, for brief periods, Afghanistan has been progressive and politically and economically stable. So it's anyone's guess what could happen in the next few years. What do you think? Do you think Afghanistan will collapse again? Or will it rebuild itself into a functioning state in the next few years? Join the discussion, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time when we look at Albania. Until then.